Welcome. I am Iceni, the artificial intelligence that powers the Encyclopedia East Anglia. Please enter your search term. Potential, noun. Latent qualities or abilities that may be developed and lead to future success. Similar words include possibilities, opportunity, promise, capability. The best-known real-world example of potential is the East of England, which contains many locations across 4 counties where opportunity is incredibly strong. Would you like to know more? Location 1, Thetford, Norfolk. Select host. You have selected Mike Rigby, are you sure? Now playing Eastern Promise.
I'm Mike Rigby. Welcome to episode 33 of Eastern Promise. My guest this week is Councillor Sam Chapman-Allen, leader of Breckland Council, and we'll be discussing the huge potential of Norfolk's gateway to the world, Thetford. Sam and I will be talking about what makes Thetford so important to the economy of the East of England, its fortuitous location betwixt Norwich and Cambridge, and why you should be paying attention to what happens there. But wait, there's more! I'll also be talking to software guru John Fagan about this November's Sync the City, the 54-hour challenge where the East of England's tech and business communities unite. And finally, I called and you answered. Eastern Promise comes to the aid of those seeking victuals, for we have recommendations of pubs on tap for CROWDSOURCERY. Thetford sits in the ultimate sweet spot, roughly equidistant between Cambridge and Norwich, either by road or rail. It's also within walking distance of the forest that bears its name. Although it hasn't been without its challenges, Thetford's street scene has evolved dramatically over recent years. New high-tech engineering and manufacturing industries have boosted the town further, and Thetford's unique, multifaceted and extensive offer in culture and heritage sets the town apart. I asked leader of Breckland Council, Sam Chapman-Allen, to tell me more about the largest town in his district. So, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome to Eastern Promise today Sam Chapman-Allen, leader of Breckland Council. Sam, welcome and thank you very much for your time today.
No, thanks for having me.
For our listeners who isn't in either Breckland or the region or even in the UK, could you paint us a picture in sound of the district?
Yeah, of course I can. So, Breckland, 500 square miles of the most beautiful, idyllic countryside. For anybody who's had the privilege to come to the fantastic county of Norfolk, you will either drive along the A47 or the A11, and as soon as you arrive within the district of Breckland, you will begin to see our fantastic Breck scenery, those iconic trees, those fir trees, those fantastic open spaces, and the fantastic, beautiful opening rolling skies of Norfolk. So for us, 500 square miles, as I said, and we're split very much from urban and rural. We've got 5 brilliant market towns, the market towns of Thetford, Swaffham, Attleborough, Dereham and Wattham, and then the rest of our community is made up of small parishes and villages spread across the whole of our locality. We're the gateway to Norfolk. We're immensely proud of that, and we're absolutely enriched in some incredible history. Many people probably wouldn't even know Breckland as a location because Breckland as a name doesn't necessarily mean anything, but you'll know our fantastic ecology through Thetford Forest, which is that gateway to the whole of the Norfolk county.
As a Breckland resident, it's always lovely to drive down the A11, and I haven't seen this done anywhere else, but there's a sign on the A11 that literally says, "Welcome to Breckland," and you're so right. When you come into Norfolk, you are in Breckland, certainly if you're coming on the A11. Before we talk specifically about Thetford, can I ask you what the Breckland overarching vision, philosophy, if you like, is when it comes to places and economic development of those places, and how you've enshrined that in the plan making process, like the adopted local plan from 2019 and the Thetford Area Action Plan?
Really good question, and it's a really big challenge we've got. We've got to make sure that all 5 of our market towns are individual and have their own unique selling point, but of course representing all of our rural communities as well. So there are two strands of work. One, a piece of work called our Future Breckland, where we're working with an organisation called Hatch to support every single market town to work out what its vision wants to be. What does it accept that its future can be? And that's not me as the district council prescribing that. That's actually everyone in that community coming forward, whether that's community sector, residents, businesses, youth, whoever it may be, to decide what they are. And that's been a really successful piece of work. We've found out things we never knew existed, whether those were opportunities but also challenges those communities faced. And we're just on our final 2 market towns now of Thetford and Attleborough. But more importantly, there will be an overarching Future Brecklands document supporting the whole of the district, working out where all of those rural communities can begin to play into and support those urban market towns across the district. Then in conjunction to that, of course, is our local plan, where we've set out our strategic growth across the whole of the locality. That was immensely challenging. I think local plans and planning can be really contentious. But as a council, we made a bold decision, rightly or wrongly, many years ago, to have 2 urban extensions, both in the market towns of Attleborough and Thetford, some 10,000 houses between those 2 communities. And in turn, that ensured that we could get the infrastructure, that staggered, staged growth in those communities, managing expectations, but more importantly, ensuring that we weren't getting aggressive growth across the rest of the district. Now, for me as the leader of the council, both of those 2 works, the Future Breckland activity and the local plan, which is now going out for review, is really important to ensure that we know where our growth is going to be, housing, but more importantly, where our employment growth is going to be. And as I said earlier, those 2 gateways into Norfolk, the A47 and the A11, coming all the way straight through the fantastic district of Breckland, we need to make sure we're monopolising on those opportunities, supporting our fantastic cathedral city of Norwich and our coastal community of Great Yarmouth, which are 2 growth hubs for the region, and ensuring that we're galvanising those opportunities, and we're doing that on both of those main arterial dual carriageways. But as a whole, Breckland has a fantastic future, and the work we're doing ensures that we've got good rates of growth for housing, low unemployment figures, and we've got, through the back of the pandemic, the work we've done through the COVID grants and business support ensured that 90% of our businesses have gone and grown over the last 2.5 years. So as a council, we've changed how we deliver those services to ensure that we're not just those statutory service provisions, but more importantly, supporting those within the ECDEV and inward investment areas.
According to the Oxford Martin School's Initiative on Regional Levelling Up, Oxford University, they say neither markets nor local governments have sufficient capacity to coordinate the research, design, delivery of levelling up strategies, resulting in the trial and error approach seen over the past decades. Now, I think, pardon the pun, this is something of a council of despair. It assumes a level of a local inertia, and it underestimates totally, and I'm sorry, Oxford Martin School, underestimates the potential for innovative approach, the hunger of central government and businesses and investors for viable prospects. What's your reaction to that as a council leader? Because you must have thought, listening to that, I would imagine, no, actually, we can do those things.
I'm a bit perplexed as to where they're coming from, and the rationale and reason for is that district councils such as myself across England have managed to get out £1.4 billion worth of funding to that exact area, whether that's around levelling up, Towns Fund, High Streets Fund, whatever it may be. They were district councils which undertook that work, not unitaries, not Mets, not London boroughs, little district councils. And the reason why we are so successful is because we know our place. We know every single mile of our community. We've forged those brilliant relationships with businesses. We know what their opportunities are, where they want to see themselves, and that's where we are best placed. The challenge for a district such as myself is I'm too poor to be rich and too rich to be poor. And if I take some of my data in some of my communities, such as one of my estates in Thetford, that's in one of the most 10 deprived wards in the whole country. But if you take that across the whole of the district, that then levels out, and therefore I'm not entitled to levelling up. But levelling up agenda, as it's landed through government, is to deal with these challenges. And it's my responsibility as a leader to work with colleagues and government to ensure that that data they're using absolutely reflects and recognises that we are best placed to deliver that. And I think government have to a degree. UK Shared Prosperity Fund is coming to district councils rather than upper tier because they understand of those 3 years, it'll be a sliding scale, not very much the first year, but the third year, we are best placed to get that money pump primed into regeneration, growth and employment support. And I'm really excited what that's going to look like and feel like for Breckland on the back of that work we've already started to undertake some 18 months ago around Future Breckland. So we're doing that work, we're doing that research, and as soon as that formula and that business case lands from government, we'll be poised ready to get that bid in. We did make a bid for the Levelling Up Fund for one of our market towns. It was Thetford. Sadly, we weren't successful. Others were, and we've communicated with government and worked out where we didn't quite succeed. And it comes back to my previous comment that the data set they use doesn't recognise that micro communities which we're trying to support through Levelling Up. They take it on that wider district centric of the formula basis, which means people like me sadly miss out.
Yeah, I mean that's right, and I did look at that data, and you do look at where Norfolk and I'm bound to say this is an Eastern Promise, but Norfolk and to a sort of less degree Suffolk, but also parts of Cambridgeshire missed out because we just weren't in that tier. But without going into that, one of my experiences is that if you can sort of get in the faces of government and excite them with the potential of something, and I've always come back to this point about ask versus offer. I always get very frustrated when people talk about, well, this is our ask. You don't want an ask. And this is a point I made to Jackie Sadek, who is huge in the world of, sort of urban regeneration. But you don't want an ask. You always want an offer because they're looking for offers and they're looking for places they can put the money that is apparently sloshing around out there. You've mentioned Future Breckland, and it is a very interesting project seeking local input into the process of reimagining places. And you've gone into the thinking behind that approach. And has that really been a case of just you've come with the right initiative at the right place, at the right places at the right time? Or has there been this underlying appetite you've become aware of for that kind of approach, and you've sort of got your heads together and come up with that?
So I think for us as a district, as I said earlier, having 5 market towns where every single one is so unique, and we absolutely embrace that, and that is a great thing for all of those to want to be. As a small district council, I've got to make sure that my resources reflect that. So last year, when the opportunity arose, we paused, took stock, and actually, by working in collaboration in partnership with an organisation such as Hatch, we've been able to work with every single one of those 5 market towns and the hinterland parishes which surround that to ensure we've got a bespoke offer and ask for every single one of those localities. And what I didn't want it to be was the district council saying this is what you're going to do. I wanted it to be a bottom-up exercise where each one of those market towns owned it from start to finish. The challenge is to make sure that we now, in partnership, deliver that. And that's not just about that community. That's me as the district, the county council, the local enterprise partnership, health, all of those other bodies, making sure that we wrap around what that offer and ask is. In hindsight, was it the right thing to do? Absolutely. I think that once again, we were ahead of the curve on what government was asking us. It comes back to your comments earlier. This is, if you give us the tools, this is what we're going to do for UK PLC. And we're poised absolutely on the cusp to be able to achieve that to great success. But you just have to give us the tools to enable us to get on and do the job. And that's why I think UK Shared Prosperity Fund will kickstart a lot of that activity across the whole of the district. Hopeful, we will put another bid in for Levelling Up, hopeful to get some more money from there. But we've got the evidence base, which government continuously asked for. That wasn't a quick exercise for us to do. That's been a prolonged piece of detailed work. And we're just hopeful that that's going to see great success over the coming months and years.
You've kind of touched on this already. Future Breckland talks about game-changing interventions, and to what extent is this going to involve Breckland in a certain amount of expectation management on both ends of the spectrum, people getting carried away and people sort of wanting to sort of put a frowny face on it all, if I can be crude. Have you had to hardwire that in from the start, or is that something you're going to sort of gradually deal with as it comes along?
So we were really bold in our approach that there were no red lines. This wasn't about a branding exercise. It wasn't about a document which is going to sit on the shelf and gather dust. This was about us saying to the communities, you, in collaboration with us as an equal partner and everybody else, decide what you want your community to look like moving forward. Not just about planning and town centres, but the wider provision of supported housing, education, skills, youth support, whatever it may be, health, across the whole of the piece. So it's a really large piece of work, but actually we wanted the communities to understand and focus not just on buildings and blocks, but the wider provision of everything else which a community needs. We are going to find that as we progress and move forward, there will be some movement around that expectation management, because not everything's in my gift. The things which sit in my gift, I'm absolutely going to have to take stock of and work out how I build that into my budget, my priorities and focus. But I've got to work with all of them to make sure that I'm nudging the county council and the local enterprise partnership and health and Homes England and Highways England and everybody else to make sure that they're changing their priorities and focus to help deliver and support those communities. So it's not necessarily about expectation management. I think it's more about articulating and explaining that not everything is in Breckland District Council's gift, that this is a complete partnership working and some things won't happen overnight, but we've got to make sure that we keep nudging and keep that focus on, if you give us the tools and enable us, this is what we can do and deliver for UK PLC and for our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. We've earlier poured scorn on the conclusions of the Oxford Martin Business School, but I'm pleased to say that their contemporary University of Cambridge Bennett Institute for Public Policy, they're arguing that museums, libraries, other cultural spaces, they're crucial in giving social opportunities and pride of place. And they say there's an ingrained assumption within government that large physical infrastructure, as roads, railways, digital, are the nuts and bolts of economic and social flourishing. And the Bennett Institute say that social amenities need a greater policy attention. Now, do you just want to perhaps reflect on that? I mean, because if you're looking at somewhere like Thetford, as we are, it's got it in spades.
I think it's twofold. One, there are those in Whitehall who are absolutely focused on big infrastructure activities of road, rail, houses, etc. But I think within the levelling up, there is a massive focus on place and the communities which are embedded within those. And Thetford is a prime example that if you look at the Eastern Daily Press, which ran an article some 3 weeks ago, where is the most joyous place to live in Norfolk? Breckland, out of all the councils, have voted the place where it's the happiest place to live. And that's down to our ecology, our open spaces, our communities, our fantastic, vibrant district. And Thetford is sat in the centre of that I grew up in Thetford, and having the ability to be in Thetford Forest within 10 minutes, to walk along the whole of the River Ouse from end to end, and then at 1MB at the British Trust of Ornithology at their nature reserve, seeing the most incredible birds migrating across the rest of the world. So our communities and our spaces are really important. Government has begun to recognise that, as I said, not just through the levelling up, but you just had the most recent cultural fund, which has been announced, supporting arts and leisure across the piece. Now, all of us have got a really important part to play to make sure that museums and libraries are at the centre of our communities. And by at the centre, not just that building where people walk past and think I'm not going to go and interact with, but actually we open those doors to everybody in those communities, making them welcoming and open space. And we've got to change how those buildings interact with those communities, that they're not always about that service provision, that they change how they enable that engagement with residents, whether that is coffee mornings or whether that's mums and tums, or whether it's different types of activities to get people over those thresholds. Because once you've got them in, you've got them, and actually you can explain to them and show them what a fantastic asset that is, and then you begin to drip feed and trickle feed the wider opportunities which are presenting. And Thetford has some fantastic museums. It's got the Dad's Army Museum, it's got Ancient House, it's got the Charles Burrell Museum, and all of those have got individual unique selling points. We need to make sure through the future Breckland's work for Thetford that all of those are tied up together. And actually I think there's more opportunities for us in Thetford around the Maharaja Julep Singh, around Thomas Paine, around the nature reserves, which, as I mentioned earlier at the BTO, if we begin to link all of those together, the cultural and tourism offer piece for Thetford, I would say is probably one of the biggest in the east of England.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I know Alex Brearley, the Forestry Management Director at Santon Downham, will be delighted to hear you praise the forest so greatly. He was one of our first interviewees on Eastern Promise. Now, just turning away from culture to investment and particularly business, commercial, industrial space. Imagine, if you will, I'm an investor looking to build an AI-driven manufacturing fabricating facility. Why should I look at Thetford?
So I think twofold. One, brand Thetford is really strong. Thetford sits within an entity as referred to the Cambridge-Norwich Tech Corridor. And people may not necessarily know where Thetford is, but they'll understand that Thetford sits on that Cambridge-Norwich Tech Corridor. Internationally renowned are those two locations. Thetford has an immensely strong manufacturing engineering background from the 1960s, and that's continued the whole way through. It's got a really strong business community through the Thetford Business Forum, and it's enabling those businesses such as yourself, if you wanted to invest, for me to make that introduction to some of those individuals in that locality to speak about where does your workforce sit? Where does your supply chain sit? Where does your opportunity around the most suitable commercial assets within the Thetford community sit? Now, that's not me as the district telling you. I would make that introduction to some of those business communities so that you can get it firsthand. And they will tell you warts and all what some of the challenges are, but also what some of the fantastic opportunities are. So Thetford has all of that. We've got something called the Thetford Enterprise Park. We're just waiting for that to come online. That infrastructure's been placed to gain access to that. But of course, that doesn't sit in my gift as a district council. That sits within that landowner's gift. Through the local plan, all of the employment sites have been pre-allocated. So we're able to explain to you what the opportunity for square footage is, what the provision around utility is. But of course, through that business community, they can tell you what it really looks and feels like. But Thetford is poised logistically, accessibility, so well along that A11, but of course, more importantly, that railway connectivity as well. And of course, with those 5,000 homes coming online in Thetford, it's a brilliant place for a new starter business to wish to come and invest in Thetford. And that ability, if you needed to move your workforce to new different types of homes where you'd be embraced into the fantastic Thetford community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. No one, I think, listening would deny that Thetford, like anywhere, has its share of challenges. But we're sort of going, I think, really brilliantly into the scale of the opportunity there. And do you think there is, however, an ingrained sense within the region of what Thetford is that isn't allowing us to see clearly as we should what it could be, and that's kind of holding us back from shouting about it across the piece with as much vigour as we should?
I think every community and every locality has its issues and concerns which can hold it back. But I believe, absolutely as a leader of Breckland Council, that Thetford is the jewel in the crown to Norfolk. It is the gateway to Norfolk, and the opportunities which sits within its grasp are phenomenal. The people of Thetford are so proud of the community they live in. Thetford is a great place. As I said earlier, I grew up in Thetford and I love my time in Thetford. The challenge for us as the District Council, through the future Breckland's work, is to make sure that we are, as you quite rightly said, lifting Thetford's profile twofold. One, to make sure that people understand this is a place where you can come and move to. Your children's education will be fantastic, and it's got great connectivity, whether that's road or rail. Beyond that, making sure that everybody understands it's a great place to come and visit. If you don't want to live here or you don't live here, come and visit. Come and visit the fantastic market town of Thetford, whether that's Thetford Forest or the British Trust of Ornithology or all of those different unique tourism offers we've got in our community. And more important, if you want to come and invest, that The space is available, the infrastructure is available, the workforce is available, the business community will welcome you with open arms. So with all three of those, Thetford has the potential to go from strength to strength. We've just got to make sure that everybody outside of Thetford, outside of Breckland and outside of Norfolk recognises that.
Now, I'm going to encourage you at this point to say the same thing you've been saying in another slightly different way. But on paper, and Thetford has it all. You can get to Cambridge in under an hour, whether you're going by car or by train. It's cheap by rail with fantastic natural amenities. It has cultural heritage assets by the absolute cartload. And to go through the future Thetford document that has been set by the residents and the businesses, two words burn themselves into your retinas, and that's potential and opportunity. And it is so fantastic that everyone in Thetford recognises what a fantastic potential there is there. And what is, in your mind, the primary source of that?
I think the primary source of the potential for Thetford is that drive and determination of the residents and the communities. That there are the old Thetfordians, there are those who moved up from London, and there are those who have been homegrown within the community of Thetford, and there are those who have moved to Thetford because of the opportunities which presented. All four of those form one of the most passionate communities I've had the privilege to work with. They know where they see themselves, they know what the challenges are, and they will quite rightly call it out. They will say what the problem is and what needs to be done about it. The challenge, as always, is for me to be able to keep pace with that through resources and funding. But Thetford has all of that in its grasp, and we've absolutely just got to make sure that it realises that. And there will be those challenges if you go to certain pockets within any community where it may not look and feel right. But we're working in partnership with everybody across the public sector, charity and business, but more importantly, the community. We can overcome those. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long period of time. And we spoke about the urban extension in Thetford, those 5,000 houses. They're not going to arrive overnight. They're going to be over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That Section 106 money, that £30 million, as that begins to draw into Thetford, will happen over that period of time. So that will be that constant change. We've got to make sure that we're tweaking the community to keep pace with what they want and they need as we move forward.
So when you're talking about attracting investors to Thetford, is there an element of if we build it, they will come? Or is it if they come, we will build it? It's chicken and egg, I suppose. Are enticing in one or two big names going to start to turn up the flow of the tap? Or are you, as it seems you already are, working with partners as the council to make some canny investments to get that ball rolling?
So I think it's twofold. We've got some massive brand names in Thetford already, from Multimatic, who are an international company making advanced manufacturing around sports cars, F1 and that type of vision, high-end tech. We've got Baxter's Pharmaceutical, an international company. They chose to stay and work in Thetford because of the fantastic engineering and the workforce they've got there. Plus all the other large and medium businesses across the community of Thetford. We've got the provision and the space already available. So twofold. If there's something there you need, come and it's available. If there's something which you need bespoke to you, speak to us and we will work out how we can deliver it for you. In relation to the homes are coming online. And you mentioned it earlier that you don't necessarily have to work in Thetford to come and live and enjoy Thetford. People travel vast distances now to their place of work. And actually, I think in the back of the pandemic, how people work will begin to change. Lots of people are working from home. I don't think that will be the status quo. I think that will change over the coming years as well to get that work-life balance right. But actually, if you are a home worker, if you are an agile worker, what a fantastic place to come and live. Surrounded by beautiful open countryside, some of the most incredible skies you will see in the east of England. The ability for your children to be 5-10 minutes away from Thetford Forest, one of the biggest man-made forests in Europe, having that offer there. People spend thousands of pounds to come to Thetford and visit centre parks. You get that opportunity to enjoy the same thing every single day. But around the business provision, we are poised, ready to support any businesses which want to come to Thetford. And we're still seeing that trickle through. We're still seeing advanced business growth. We're still seeing that churn of different types of units across the locality of Thetford. But of course, as I said earlier, through the local plan, we've got those extra employment sites ready and working in partnership, either through ourselves or the local enterprise partnership or the landowners. We can make sure that we're delivering the right type of unit for the businesses of tomorrow today.
Well, when I interviewed George Freeman, which is sort of the first interview we put out on Eastern Promise, he was talking about how, when viewed from the perspective of international investors, Breckland locations, and he mentioned Watton, but we're talking about Thetford, which is even closer, look so close to Cambridge. Now, jibing sceptics may think that, and I've heard this, and which is one of the reasons I'm focusing on Thetford so closely, is it's unlikely to hold much interest from an audience in Cambridge. Now, nobody, I think, is seriously saying that a Cambridge lab is going to up sticks to Thetford. But again, they may want to build a manufacturing and fabricating facility where they've got fantastic access to Cambridge and their staff can get considerably more in terms of housing for less than they would ever get in the environs for Cambridge with what for most people is a quite a reasonable commute. So what do you say to those who think, oh, well, yeah, Thetford, but it's not going to, Cambridge, they're never going to be feeding into each other?
So we come back to that piece I said earlier. So the Cambridge-Norwich Tech Corridor, that brand, that awareness of those two locations. If you treat it like a pond and you drop two big pebbles in Cambridge and Norwich, the ripples would both meet at Thetford at that sort of equidistant provision. That means that they're in employment distance, supply chain distance. And actually, George's comments around the opportunities, to some degree, I agree with. If you think that we're just about to get some advanced scientific research moving into Canary Wharf in London, who would have thought that we would have seen them move into central London? But they're going to, because those opportunities are presenting themselves. And I think that exactly the same can be mentioned around the community of Thetford. We've already spoke about Baxter's pharmaceutical manufacturing in Thetford. That is advanced range of what they're doing. And actually that supply chain sits within the location of the greater Thetford area and the eastern region. So depending on how hot Cambridge gets around its ability to have future employment sites, future residential growth, I think that over time we will begin to see that move into other locations. Now, if you work backwards from Cambridge, your locations you may wish to do that are Bury Stebbins. That's in exactly the same issues and concerns around Cambridge is finding that it's nearly at capacity. You move along further to Red Lodge or Mildenhall, they haven't got the offer which Thetford has got. Thetford is it's been around for thousands of years. The history is ingrained there. And actually, if I was going to want my family to start a new opportunity, I want that to be in Thetford, where you've got fantastic access to connectivity, good access to education, and fantastic access to those communities and outside spaces. That offer makes Thetford a really prime place for you to move your family to or to move to for future employment. And actually, I think employers are beginning to look as to where my workforce is moving and travelling to and from for where they do their future growth. And if we move a bit further north of Thetford to Snetterton, that's one of our other growth hubs. It's surrounded by no houses, no homes. Surround Snetterton directly. Snetterton looks to Attleborough and Thetford for its employees to move to. So as Snetterton is a growth hub, the employees will come from Thetford along the A11 and make that 7-minute journey up the road. So everything is poised, ready for that success. We've got the housing coming online, as I said earlier. The infrastructure for new schools is within that plan as well, that 30 million. The ability for us to upgrade health provision sits within there. We've just got to make sure that everyone understands Thetford is a place to come and invest. People know it, such as Multimatics and Baxter's, and the brilliant businesses who are already embedded within there. We've just got to make sure that other people know about Thetford. As I said earlier, that sits within that Cambridge-Norwich Tech Corridor. Not everyone knows where Thetford is, but people know Thetford sits somewhere between Cambridge and Norwich.
Well, I would think the listeners we have in the United States, in India and in Europe will have heard that message loud and clear, which is absolutely fantastic. Just before we wind up, do you want to come on to the Thetford Enterprise Park? Now, I'm hoping to go and stand and sort of record a bit of, sort of taking a look at, and describing the potential of the location, where you're absolutely next to the A11 and you're on one of the gateways into the town. What do you want to just expand on the potential that's there? You did mention that obviously you're primed, ready to bring that forward, dependent on other partners. But absent that, did you just want to go into the potential of that space?
Yeah, of course. So the Thetford Enterprise Park sits on a prime location next door to the A11. It's just on the peripheral of our industrial location land, just to the mid-west of Thetford itself. So that land isn't in our gift. That land is poised within the local plan as employment site. That's been pre-allocated. And of course, like anything, it has its challenges, which was around accessibility to the site. So us as the District Council work with the County Council and the Local Enterprise Partnership to put the roundabout in. The infrastructure came first. Did we get criticised for that a little bit by the community? Yes, we did. But it was the right thing to do. We had to get the infrastructure within that position early on. So the site is now ready for any future growth. So we're working with the developers and the agents on that site, Pigeon, to make sure that they're doing everything they can to get that site brought on early. Now, I've got a view as to the type of units, the type of employment, the type of assets I would want to be there. But of course, that's not in my gift to determine that. I can only nudge to make sure that the agents of Pigeon are getting the right individuals. They've had a lot of interest around the location, right. And it's twin tracking because, of course, Pigeon are also leading on the urban extension to the north of Thetford. So it's in their absolute best interest to make sure, along with housing, they're getting those new employment sites coming on board as well. So to some regard, it's immensely easy having the same agent looking after one of your major new employment sites and one of your residential growth extensions as well. And we've got a really strong relationship with them. That's nearly a decade we've been working together through both of those, the residential and the Thetford Enterprise Park. Now, some people will say, why has nothing come on board yet, Sam? Why have there not been any big, fantastic, shiny new buildings? And it sits, once again, it's not in my gift. I can only make sure that those inquiries coming to us as the District Council are working through to make sure that we're finding the right sites. Now, of course, those assets aren't built. So sometimes if I need an immediate facility now, I can find it somewhere else within the community of Thetford. For those who've got a longer term provision, and some of those conversations are still ongoing currently, that gives us a longer lead time for the Enterprise Park. But it's poised in a really prime position for Thetford, and that in conjunction with the employment site just north of the Enterprise Partnership will see a fantastic handrail just to the east of the A11, hugging Thetford for all of that new growth around employment and inward investment we're expecting over the next decade.
I spoke recently to David Tate of Hethel Innovation, and the story he was relaying, and you can hear that on Eastern Promises. He was saying that early on, when Hethel Innovation was really starting to get, before it really started to get motoring, he came under a lot of pressure to accept any kind of business that came along, and he said he really had to hold the line to get what they, the kind of tenant they actually knew would add value. Is that something you must be sort of aware of, that pressure, and is that something you're sort of actively working to make, as you alluded to, the right tenant?
Yeah, and to some degree, David had a bit of an advantage because some of the infrastructure and some of those buildings were already in place. We're starting with a blank canvas, and from the district perspective, I want to make sure that, because it's that gateway to Norfolk, as soon as you drive up the A11, that 2 miles as you enter Breckland and Thetford, you've got the Enterprise Park on your right-hand side. So I want to make sure that it's the right type of units. But I completely understand that you've got to get that mix to make the whole site viable, to make sure that we've got not just manufacturing and office provision, but also some logistics as well. So I've got some expectation management I've got to do personally. I've got to do that, the community of Thetford as well. But Pigeon, who are the agent, hear me loud and clear as to what I would hope for, and what I would quite frankly oppose if it did come online to that location. So those conversations are really honest, and I think you are right. You have got to hold the line. You could go for that low-hanging fruit. You could get something across the line quite quickly and get something thrown up which proves that the concept has seen reality. But actually, for the benefit of Thetford, for the whole of Thetford, not just now but for years to come, I think having a really clear vision of what that site looks like, and through the Future Brecklands work, which is ongoing, it hasn't yet come to its final fruition yet as to what it wants to look like, I think we're beginning to see some really exciting positions from the community of Thetford to what they are willing and wanting to see at the urban extension.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm bound to, because they're very good friends of the show, mention you've got somewhere like the epicentre at Haverhill. Now, Haverhill is a fantastic little town. It's not Bury St Edmunds, obviously, and it's not Ipswich, although we are going to go and take a look at Ipswich. So, but it's a fantastic place, and it's got such great tenants like Codecoat, who are making antiviral, who are sort of coming online and doing antiviral coatings at exactly the point we needed them. Do you have any model for the kind of thing you want to see at the Enterprise Park in terms of either elsewhere in this region, country, or across the world, and how you'd ideally like to see that online, or is that too touchy?
I wouldn't say it's too touchy. It comes back twofold. If I look at the other locality of Snetterton we're working with, we've got different landowners coming together to do a piece of master plan work as to what they're willing to accept and where they see their vision and growth opportunities sitting. And that's been immensely challenging, but actually that's seen big benefit realisation, because actually as the district council, we can ensure that any inward investment knows where it can position itself within the district. But for Thetford and the Enterprise Park, it is that large piece of land in single ownership. And depending on what those asks and offers are, you've got to make sure we get that staging right. Because of its geography and its topography of where it sits, you've got to make sure that it's done in that staged approach while simultaneously allowing that to be a viable site. Now, we could whack large logistics units up there. They could be quite thirsty on the grid. They could be quite space intensive. And actually, it may not be the right thing to get on there first, but it could be the quickest get over the line. Or we could hold the line and build some incubator units, some small startups. They're more costly for the developer, whoever that may or may not be, whether that sits within Pigeon and they develop out themselves, or whether they sell the site and allow that natural growth to take place for those businesses, but it's quite intensive. So we have the vision of where we want it to be, but as I said earlier, I think through the Future Breckland work, that's beginning to change somewhat in the back of COVID to what the community of Thetford needs today, but also where they see themselves in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So what I envisaged it to look like, I think that's going to look and feel a little bit differently when that gets presented in July of this year through the Future Brecklands work.
So fairly soon, Eastern Promise is going to be touring some innovation hubs run by Cambridge University around the city. They're called Idea Space. What message would you like us to convey to them? Would you like Eastern Promise to convey to them about Thetford and its potential?
Thetford's open for business. We are poised, ready to support you. We will do all the heavy lifting for you for any opportunities you see with that growth rippling out into the community of Thetford. We have the space, we have the workforce, we have the connectivity, we have the infrastructure, we have the utility provision to make sure that you can go from strength to strength. And what a fantastic opportunity for you, not just to say that you are working in Cambridge, but the fantastic, beautiful market town of Thetford, steeped in history, and actually you can then put your next chapter in the books of where Thetford is going from strength to strength. Let's cast our minds back, and Thetford's been poised, whether it was at the flint manufacturing which used to take place at Grimesgraves, ensuring that they're moving forward to Charlesborough, that industrial revolution. We're poised next for the next revolution in which Thetford is supporting the whole of UK PLC. So for anybody within the Cambridge locality, and to your investors and those opportunities around ECDEV, Thetford is ready for you. Come across the border. We're most welcoming, and we want to do business with you to ensure that your community is going from strength to strength. The brand Cambridge-Norwich Tech Corridor continues to be recognised internationally, and Thetford sits at the heart of everything we're trying to do and trying to achieve.
Could you, as a final question, what is your, Sam Chapman-Allen, what is your ideal day in Thetford?
Ideal day for me in Thetford is to park up at the Riverside Complex and to wander round to the corner to the Light Cinema and grab a fantastic coffee and a pastry to start my morning. And then from there to make a decision whether I'm going to walk left along the river up to Thetford Forest for the day, which would take me a couple of hours, and I can then have a coffee at High Lodge, the biggest centre for the east of England, and a coffee there. Or alternatively, that I'm going to walk the other way. I'm going to walk along the beautiful river, past Three Nuns Bridges, across over to the British Trust of Ornithology, and spend a bit of time there watching some of the interesting birds about. Or alternatively, I can stay and have dinner in one of our fantastic individual restaurants, go to the cinema, or if I'm feeling a little bit adventurous, I can go over to Castle Mound and see how quickly I can race up those steps to that man-made structure in the centre of the community of Thetford. But of course, more importantly, I could just wander around. Thetford has some beautiful architecture. And if it's a really wet, dreary day, I can visit Ancient House Museum. I can visit the Charles Borough Museum. I can visit the Dad's Army Museum. I can visit the Thetford Galleries. All of those locations offer me something to do inside. Easy parking across the whole of the market town. You can park anywhere for free all day. And if it's feeling a little bit Tetris and I've come from where I live outside of Breckland, I can catch the train in and easily walk into Thetford itself. So Thetford has so much for me to do, but more importantly, I can take my nieces and nephews along with me as well. I can bring the whole family. There's something for all of us to do. And as the weather gets a bit better, I may wander across the river and go paddleboarding on Thetford Little Ouse with the family, which you can do through Bush Adventures. So there's so much to do in Thetford. You've just got to come and see it for yourself.
It was a huge pleasure to chat with Councillor Sam Chapman-Allen, and I'm incredibly grateful to him for his time. For more information on Future Breckland, go to breckland.gov.uk/future-Breckland. Next week, I'll be on foot, exploring the town in the company of Jack Weaver, manager of the Greater Thetford Partnership, who'll be taking me to see not only the best of Thetford today, but also where the best of Thetford is yet to be. Please do join me. Speaking of the best being yet to come, this November sees the return of one of the best known, most loved and truly challenging events in the east of England. Sync the City gives budding entrepreneurs a chance to pitch their big idea and turn it into reality with the guidance of experienced business mentors. You'll pull together a team of engineers and designers with just 54 hours to build your own digital business startup from scratch. I tracked down Sync the City co-founder John Fagan to tell me more. John Fagan, Sync the City, you're here in the beautiful city of Norwich. We've got St Peter Mancroft in front of us, the Forum behind us. I've moved into my slightly strained radio voice, which must mean there's somebody here with a fantastic story to tell the East of England. Welcome to Eastern Promise.
Thank you, Mike.
So, Sync the City, for those who haven't heard of it, what is it? What does it do?
The most simple terms I use for everybody so that hopefully they understand is it's like a cross between an episode of the BBC Apprentice followed by an episode of Dragon's Den. So, yeah, that's how it works. You know, where in The Apprentice you've got, you know, for an episode there's a mission to create a business from scratch normally. You've got two sides of the teams, one focusing on production, one focusing on sales and marketing. And then they realise that, they go through a process, and then, yeah, it's whoever's the winner. Yeah, and for us, that team goes forward to, you know, to a group of judges who give them the cash, the £3,000 cash prize, and then there's also a People's Choice prize. So there's a Judge's Choice and People's Choice voted by.
So, I mean, it's taking place this November, isn't it?
Yes, it's happening this November. It normally happens every November, apart from last year because of the pandemic.
We all know why, yeah.
November the 17th to 19th. Yeah.
And it's almost like a social occasion as well as an actual competition, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, the social occasion really happens at the end. So we try to keep it quite tight through, because it's 54 hours. So it starts on a Thursday at 4:30, goes through to Saturday at 10:30, and it's the final pitches, the Dragon's Den part, where we open it up to the public. So we might have 100 or 200 extra people coming along if it's a big event to see the final pitches, which are quite fun to watch. So then it attracts everyone from the tech community and hopefully beyond to enjoy the pitches, celebrate the talent, and have a beer after.
So, what's the purpose behind it? Because you started this quite some time ago now, and it seems to have grown and grown and grown into the point where it's kind of a must-have, ringed on the calendar, a must-do.
Yes.
For the tech community in the east of England.
Yes. So it's actually, well, Sync the City is an event which is hosted by Sync Norwich and UEA. Sync the City has been going for, I think it's in our 7th year now. So the idea of Sync the City, originally when I brought it to Norwich, I was thinking would literally sync the city and there'd be 1,000 people there. It's hard to get 1,000 people to give up their weekend to do that. But the idea of Sync in the City is bringing together, which I'd say Sync the City is very good at, bringing together the different sectors. So private, public and education sectors, and also 50% professionals, 50% students. Has a really good diversity of people as well. I mean, particularly last year, I think it was almost 40% female. So it really does, I would say, good job at Sync in the City.
Tell us about last year's winner.
Yeah, so last year's winner was Scoop. So this is David Kingfisher, was leading the team. He's actually taken the business forward as a real startup.
Great to hear.
It's not, the strapline, Sync the City, build and launch a startup in 54 hours for fun or for profit. So we want to make it fun, because people have their day jobs and they're not necessarily interested in building a startup. They're going there for networking and learning experience, but there's been a few real startups that span out of it, and Scoop is one of them. And last year was our first themed event because Norwich Bid approached us to do a themed event on upcycling. And so we had it's fully only about upcycling, and Scoop won it, building a platform to connect waste producers with upcyclers. And they're actually doing a pilot in Norwich.
That's really good to hear. I mean, really fantastic. Something positive has spun out of that. Now, is there going to be another theme, or is it very much open?
We're going to go back to keeping it open. The main reason is because if we did themed event, I think it just limits maybe. It's already quite difficult event to put on and attract the audience, so we want to keep it quite open. When you put on a themed, it might reduce the audience. We try and get 10 to 12 teams together. Last year we did it 60 because of COVID. We actually had it in a marquee in Chapelfield Gardens up the road. We're keeping it open again, so that actually makes it also quite exciting. Because
you never know, do you?
No, we don't pre-seed anything. We don't want to find out what people are pitching. We'll support them in that, but we don't know what's going to happen until people get on that stage on the Thursday evening and pitch their initial 1-minute pitch.
So talk me through what would you expect to see coming out of that 1-minute pitch, and then perhaps you can talk me through the whole 54-hour process.
So the 1-minute pitch is strictly 1-minute pitch. So that's how the event starts, anyone can go up on stage, and they've got 1 minute, and you can just Google the perfect 1 minute pitch. The first 10 seconds is introducing yourself, then you give the problem statement, solution statement, what you're looking for in terms of the skills to move it forward. And you kind of need to stand out, because we do have 40 pitches going up, so it's like one after the other. A bell rings if they go over. So if you do anything to stand out, even, obviously humour helps, but wearing a funny hat or anything, really to stand out from the crowd. And obviously it needs to resonate with the audience. If there's an emotional element, that really helps. If it's personal to the individual, that's going to be a winner to go forward to the later stages.
So you've made your pitch, and it's the kind of thing where I think, well, what would I pitch? And my mind immediately empties of any kind of credible idea at all.
We could pitch your podcast. Why did you start it? What was the problem? This is the solution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, you're confusing me now. Take me. You've moved forward to the next stages. What happens next?
We normally get 100, 120 participants, and we sell specific tickets. So we have like 3 categories: design, which we 20% of the tickets dedicated to design, 40% to technical folk, any kind of tech folk, mainly software engineers, but it could be any technical mindset. Then the other 40% is business, so marketing, sales, entrepreneurs. So they are attending the first evening. They're in the audience. You have coloured bands to indicate your skill set.
Right.
Anyone goes up on stage, you get those 40, and those 40 are then whittled down to 20 by the lead mentors.
Yes.
And some of the people may pitch a similar problem solution, so the mentors might ask them to combine. So you got that 20, and then that 20 needs to be whittled down to 12. And that's based on audience vote. We keep it old school. You have a jar, a tiddlywink when you come in, and you have to fill your jar up as many tiddlywinks as possible.
Give us your tiddlywinks.
Yeah, exactly. Which is chaos but fun. But that's not the main chaos part. Yeah. Then
there's more chaos.
Yeah, there's more chaos because we get it down to 12, but sometimes there's split votes, and then it'll be down to 3. We're finally voting on, and then there'll be another round of tiddlywinks, and then we get it down to 12. Then those 12 need to recruit their team from the audience.
It's not going to. Please tell me it's not going to be like school where you to line up for sports and say, "I'll pick Gary for goal."
No, it's like a bazaar, a market,
All right.
So, like, obviously, if you're in the audience and you really like someone's idea, you've got to go up into them,
race up to them and say,
because they've already said, "I need these skills. I'm a good mobile engineer. I know about mental health issues. I know about homelessness. Can I join your team?" To a certain element, people kind of already have, there's a bit of a team pre-formation, but we try and, that's against the rules. So it's a combination of going up. You are supported by a mentor at that stage.
I was going to ask you about the mentors in a minute.
Yeah, we used to allow them just to go for it, but then we got imbalanced teams, and we did get people left, on the school playing field.
Yeah.
So the mentor support get assigned to each pitch winner and help them put their team together, because you want to spread the skills across. You can't take all the software engineers, you can't take all the designers, and you then get your team. So you imagine, you're putting together a company in the space of 15 minutes. Normally, obviously, that takes maybe weeks, months, years. So it's that team formation, that recruitment process is complete chaos, but it's fun.
It sounds it.
It is fun.
So have you selected your mentors already? Are they still coming forward? Because I know we've got Tom Wood, whom many listeners will know, UX designer. Until about a year ago, the brains behind Foolproof. He remains the brains behind Foolproof because he did start it up. But I spoke to him, and he's on the mentorship.
Yes. So
stream.
Tom was, he's been with with the event since the beginning. He was a judge in the beginning, and then I asked him to be a mentor second year, and then he's basically one of our, lead mentors.
Yeah.
So he's core to the success. Yeah. So we normally have 2 lead mentors. It used to be Tom and Hayley Johnson, and at the moment it's Tom and Catherine Wright. And then they'll have, we need a mentor per team, and actually each lead mentor leads a mentor team, because we like to create a bit of competition.
Of course.
And we're very lucky, with the mentors, because when I first did the event, didn't know anyone in Norwich, and I emailed, because you have to be experienced.
Yeah.
So I emailed people that sort of knew. Well, I already had Sync Norwich, sort of knew, and I just said, if you can spare any time, an hour or whatever, come along, because it is 54 hours. That was chaos, because you would have, obviously, everyone's experience, but they have different opinions, don't they?
Well, this is the human race, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was really bad for the teams, because you'd have mentors dropping in, and then they'd have to re-pitch their idea, and then they'd get different advice and all that kind of stuff. So because the event's grown in popularity, now we're able to, we get people approaching us saying, I'd like to be a mentor. We now say that you have to commit to the whole 54 hours.
Yeah, that's reasonable, isn't it?
And we called it, we moved to X Factor style mentoring, where you're embedded in your team.
Yeah.
You're dedicated to the team, and you want your team to win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's,
So that presumably the mentors know that they're there to mentor, and it's the person who did the initial pitch is still in charge, but boy do they need to listen to their mentor and take on board what they hear.
Yeah, it's tricky to be a mentor, because actually it's a learning experience for the mentors.
I bet.
Because you're taking a team through a process which you may not have done, and it's really scary, because you're kind of the expert, and you've got supposed expert. So an outcome I haven't kind of realised with Sync the City of Poplar, there's a great experience for the mentors. Mm-hmm. They learn a lot, and they're hanging out for 2.5 days with other C-level people, which they'd never do. Some of these people you're lucky enough to get half an hour meeting, but they've given up their time for the the community, and they're hanging out with other mentors for 2.5 days. And
people sleep, right?
Yes, I was told.
You released them at some point.
Yeah, we do. I was told early on, don't do because originally I was fully, we're camping,
Sleep who needs sleep.
I thought they'd bring you, but I was told by someone who'd sort of done hackathons before, send people home, because otherwise the showcase at the final pitch, which is a show, is a complete car crash. Yeah. So
they can't form coherent sentences, kind of
thing.
No.
So once they got the team formation, then there is like kind of a process. You're doing everything that you would normally do in building a business. So initially, we get them to fill out a business model canvas, which describes their value proposition, the 2 sides of the market, the particular market segment, what they're offering them, how they're going to find them, and etc. And then you have to validate that value proposition, doing market research, not only competitor research, talking to your potential customers, finding out. So you actually have to, so we have people out in the streets the next day on Friday, doing surveys, in Norwich. So you're out there, and you really have to put yourself out your comfort zone.
You really do. I remember doing that. Had to do that for A-level politics on the streets of York. So it's not an easy. I tip my hat to. It's not an easy.
If you think back at The Apprentice, an episode of Apprentice, they are putting themselves out their comfort zone to a certain degree, and they're doing things. We kind of encourage people to do that as well.
So, how? Obviously, this is sort of certainly started with the tech community. How tech-based do the projects need to be, or is it a kind of, you depend on what it is? Depends on, we'll select the right mentor from like the business community, say.
Good question. So we kind of initially, yes, it's very much, the first few events were quite techy. I only had access through Sync Norwich to tech community. So they were, I would say there was a lot of engineers there. When you get people on that stage pitching problems, they are generally tech for good, they're social, environmental, educational problems. That's what we found.
Yeah, you don't get, yes, this is my problem, I'm very poor and I want a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my problem, who can help?
Yeah, well, we get some sort of like that, but no, I've got all the, these are the list here I'm showing Mike. So these are the winners. Overall, we've had 80 teams. Those are all the...
And those are the ones that didn't make it, are they?
Didn't make it. 80 teams, 80 ideas. And actually, my favourite winner was the first one, MyLib.
MyLib, the library in your pocket, 2014 Judge's Choice.
And that is actually the best example of bringing together the private and public sector, because we're lucky enough, because Norfolk County Council has always sponsored it, and we had the head of libraries came along and pitched his problem.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Hey.
The guys who won that, it was all guys, built a really cool solution. They basically built a plugin for Amazon. .com.co.uk, a Chrome, a web browser plugin. When you're on a book, it inject code into the page and tell you if it's available at your library.
Yeah.
So and how far that library is away.
Oh wow.
So you could borrow the book, because the problem they had is footfall.
Yeah.
Declining footfall at libraries, and really elegant solution. They actually then also built a mobile app that you could check out the book yourself.
Yeah.
And they did a promo video right here.
Oh, cool.
At the forum. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking down the list, and there's some that really sprung. If my wife's listening, Pantry, bring intelligence to the table. That sounds ideal for us. And what do we got? Safe Point, lone worker safety solution.
They are one of the other ones that actually won. Oh, obviously the one.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're still a company.
Wow.
They
That's
launched,
great.
and that is actually a real problem. Actually in Norfolk with farmers, and getting injured.
Yes.
So simple app where if you're a farmer and you're going to do something a little bit dangerous, you basically have guardians that you can set an alert. Mm-hmm. So for the next 15 minutes, I'm doing this job, and if I don't check out of it, then raise alarm.
Something's gone wrong.
Whenever and obviously social care.
Wow.
So they're actually, still exist today. Yeah.
Excellent.
So you can see a lot of mental health issues there.
Yeah.
Evercare, a lot of caring, communication caring. That was previous year. Homelessness. So there's loads, really good, diverse set of problems there. So I would say pretty much all of those are kind of tech for good. Pantry might, that's recipes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's more commercial. Yeah.
I was thinking more sort of, when you go shopping. I'm going to say too much now. I've just thought of what I need.
Pantry was a really good example of bringing two. So what we also try and encourage is using services available from local companies. So
yes.
So Pantry, I think that used Brand Bank's data.
Right. Yes.
And Rainbird's AI platform.
Yes. James Dewes is one of the people I must track down.
Yeah.
And because I remember years and years ago watching Rainbird recommend him a cocktail.
Oh, okay.
And
that. So that was a good example of bringing those technology and data sources together to come up with I think it was recipe recommendations. And they also integrated Amazon Echo, so you could Alexa, so you could ask Alexa.
Yeah.
So they had it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a Bloody Mary, by the way, the recommended cocktail. But yeah, this is some fantastic. because I just thought pantry. My thought was, so you when you go shopping, you actually know what you've already got, so you don't, because otherwise sometimes we come back with far too much, and say, oh, we've already got like 10 bottles, 10 loads of beans. So.
You've got your pitch right there.
Well, I've got my pitch right there. Nobody can have that.
Yeah.
That's mine. Right.
Sortie was very similar to that. Not quite similar to that. No, actually not. But it wasn't similar at all. But Sortie was...
And they were the 2018 Judges' Choices.
Yeah, they actually got onto BBC Look East and did a full interview and everything, which is cool. And that was, you don't know if it's recyclable or not. And you basically an app where you can show, your carton or whatever and scan it and it would say, yes, that's recyclable, which is obviously a big problem. Getting decent quality recycling materials into waste is good, not
and you don't
things.
know, and you don't know whether you're contaminating it or not.
Exactly, contamination.
Well,
so very cool.
So, I mean, do you at the end of each day, what happens is it just like blow a whistle?
Oh no,
pack
it's
up
less than no. We have check-ins, so we kind of follow like agile sprints, but it's all condensed to 54 hours, so you'll be having check-ins with the team every 2 to 4 hours, to get them through the process. You really need to, by the Friday lunchtime, have your business model canvas out.
Yeah.
Doing your market research and start thinking about your prototype and everything. So you have stand-ups every 2 to 4 hours to see where the team is. Then all the mentors meet to discuss where their teams are, and then ask for help. My team's really struggling with this. Can you come in and help me? And then, just to get them through, because it is a lot of pressure. I mean, there's blood, sweat and tears. We do have people, in tears, and you're forced strangers together in an, intense situation. And sometimes, it can be a bit messy.
But something good comes right out of it.
By the time you come...
And you made friends.
One of the things is... once you completed the whole event, it's kind of like a whirlwind, and there's such a feel-good factor afterwards. You're thinking about it for weeks after. The social media doesn't really chill out because people look back and they just cannot believe. We've seen amazing transformations in people. One of my favourite stories is because sometimes the UEA send a lot of students.
Excellent.
And they might do a pre-pitch practice event, and one girl came up to me after the event and said, that guy that pitched today for that team, I can't remember the team and the name, I saw him pitch on the Wednesday in front of 5 of us. He was a nervous wreck and it was a complete mess. And that he went through and pitched the final pitch in front of 300 people. And she said, I could not believe the transformation from that Wednesday through to the Saturday. Because they get coached through the pitches. We even have a stage coach comes along, acting coach Simon. You have to do a professional pitch. Actually, it's more like the end of The Apprentice, when you're trying to win The Apprentice like that. So it's as good, it's a proper decent show where it's very slick. You get teams to the, checkpoints throughout the day, and then on the Saturday you obviously have the final. It's all streamed online, and you're a sweaty, happy mess afterwards, and you all go to the pub, and it's really good in the pub afterwards. Everyone there so chuffed, so excited about what they've done, even to the point where people come up and say it's absolutely life-changing for them.
That's amazing. And it sounds like while you're doing it at a hectic time, but at the end, such fun and something you can look back on with such pride as well. And you've got the opportunity to take these technologies forward, or whatever forward, and really make a difference, not just to this city, but to the east of England and beyond.
Well, I would say the biggest benefit is learning experience. So, for students, they've got some hardcore work experience on their CV. They've experienced what it's working like for business, 1 year condensed into 2.5 days, and you see it, they'll put it on their CV. And also, the professionals, they might be working in their particular domain, isolated for years and years, and they're very good marketeer, but they know nothing about software development, and they gain a lot from that.
I bet they do, yeah.
The biggest gain, like for me, including the mentors, I say, Sync City, we all upgrade our skill set once, we all upgrade it once a year. That has a great impact on the city, because everyone gets better.
Amazing. Well, it's something to really look forward to. Does someone get sent out for fish and chips at lunchtime every day?
I know. One thing we do is put on really good food.
Oh, now they stay well, you see.
We make sure we feed people well, so they get breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Sold.
And some drinks as well. So you come, you get your bacon butties, sausage rolls, and coffees available all the time. We feed people good lunch, because that basically keeps people there. Otherwise you wander off and may not come back. Yeah.
Well, we'll be there. I'll be there, so waving my microphone into people's noses.
Look forward to it,
and saying, how are you getting on? And hopefully they won't be so stressed that they'll try and...
Yeah, you could capture a lot of good stories.
I hope so. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
I've always wanted someone to do that, because people come along and sort of summarize the whole event, but if you get stuck in there, actually we should get you hooked up with hanging out with the mentor team, and then the mentors might know a good story for you to go and have a chat with someone.
And we can make it work that way.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much for coming talking to me today, and I'm really looking forward to it already, and hopefully be there when the curtain comes down and we can chat to the winner and look forward to them making a real difference to the east of England. Thank you.
Cool, thanks Mike. Yeah, and just one final point there, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Please, you really, welcome anybody to come, so don't be... A lot of people say, I can't come along because I know nothing about tech. I had Craig Dimbleby, he was the head of the Black Cab Association in Norwich. He came along. Well, he emailed me and said, I know nothing about tech, but I want this idea. I had to call him up and encourage him to come along. And he came along, and he didn't get People's Choice, but he got special recognition. He was sitting there for the whole event with his notepad and pen, but he had an idea, and he had these creative people around realizing that. So really looking for people outside the tech community in a job where you might have a problem and you think technology can be used to solve it. Just go along to Sync the City, and when we buy a ticket, when they go live September the 1st, come along. It's the perfect opportunity to kind of get something built which might solve one of your everyday problems. So that's what we're looking for.
Well, I know there are scientists who listen to this, innovators who listen to this, people in local government who listen to this, and I'm sure that they will have a problem that they think technology can solve, and I urge them, come along, give it a go, and it sounds like you're going to have a fantastic time. John, again, thank you very much.
All right, cheers. Thanks, Mike.
It was a huge pleasure to speak to John, and you can find out more about the event by going to syncthecity.com. That's SYNC the city, all one word, .com, and I look forward to seeing you there. And now, a good local pub has much in common with the parish church, except the pub is warmer and has better conversation. And we have some cracking establishments to share in...
CROWDSOURCERY.
Well, this week you join me at an audio engineers pub, run by Eastern Promise's very own Engineer 49, the Jack and Cable. It's a very select establishment. You can't just turn up when you want. You have to have the right frequency. And you have to order in the right way. You have to wait until someone else puts in an order, then say you'll have 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Also, if you have any suggestions, for God's sake, don't tell Engineer 49. He hates feedback. But back to your recommendations. First up this week, Neil Griffin, Innovation Director at the Innovation Centre Knowledge Gateway at the University of Essex in Colchester. Oh, This is my specialist subject, says Neil. There are amazing pubs across the East. Well, he's got that right. Neil's fave has got to be the Newborn Fox, he says. Great food and drink, plus the location is welcoming and always vibrant. It holds good memories for Neil and builds a community. Run by the good people at Deben Inns. That's debeninns.co.uk/Fox. Thank you, Neil Griffin. And also grateful for that contribution are indeed the good people at Deben Inns, who I hope are giving Neil at least one complimentary drink for his trouble. Gareth Dalgleish, working for over 40 years in UK nature conservation, suggests the Sweffling White Horse in Suffolk, one of the best pubs in the world, closely followed by the Low House at Laxfield, also in Suffolk. Web addresses for those are theswefflingwhitehorse.co.uk, all one word, and lowhouselaxfield.com. All-round good egg Saul Humphrey next. He suggests the Merchant House in Norwich, cafe by day, an understated pub with courtyard by night. You can find out more at Merchants House Norwich, that's all one word, merchantshouse.norwich.co.uk. There is no statute of limitations on crowdsourcery, so Saul goes on to add his favourite local country pub, the Whittaker White Lion, ideal for socialising, a quiet drink, an excellent meal, and the occasional band. You can find out more at whittakerwhitelion.co.uk, and for those not steeped in the law, that's spelled wheatakerwhitelion.co.uk. That choice is well and truly supported by Gareth Dalgleish, who says, yes, we love that one too. Stayed a night in spring and really liked it. Wonderful food. Saul Humphrey then proceeds to arrange to meet Gareth at the Whittaker White Lion, have a beer, and promise not to leave until they find a more sustainable solution to nutrient neutrality. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The power of crowdsourcery, yet again. From seeking pub recommendations to fixing one of the most intractable issues to bedevil the construction sector for many a moon. Look out for more info from Saul and Gareth on that one, I think. Another friend of the show, Michelle Chambers, Business Development Manager at Chaplain Farrant, suggests Gonzo's Tea Room, a quirky pub with rooftop seating. Always a lot of stuff on the walls to look at, and always busy with a great atmosphere. That's gonzostearoom.com. Richard Powell, OBE, Environmental Charity Advisor and Independent Chair, suggests the Lion at Thurn. Great beers and ciders, awesome food, and a real pub in the winter rather than just a Broads pub. I'm not sure what just a Broads pub is, but that sounds slightly negative to me. But you can find out more about the Lion at Thurn at thelionatthurn.com. For last orders at this week's Crowdsourcery, Tom Abbott, Green Easy, and Bream Assessor. The Walberswick Bell, says Tom. You can find out more about the aforementioned Walberswick Bell at bellinwalberswick.co.uk.
We now have breaking news.
I'm sorry, Mike, but we've got to go over to the late-breaking editions we have coming through from John Fagan, CEO of Scribe, who tells us he is lucky enough to live near both the Gunton Arms and the Suffield Arms, both owned by the Gunton Arms Limited. Then closer, we have the Shambles Cafe Bar Bistro in North Walsham. Also swooping in with some last-minute entries is Alice Whitney, founder-director at Creative Nation. Alice also goes for the Low House in Laxfield, as well as the Star in Wenhaston. That's wenhastonstar.co.uk. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, John. That's been this late-breaking edition to Crowdsourcery. And so, as Engineer 49 loads the empties of fate into the dishwasher of eternity and wipes clean the Specials Board of Destiny for another day. That's all from Eastern Promise this week. My huge thanks to Councillor Sam Chapman-Allen and John Fagan, to Audionaut Extraordinaire Engineer 49, and everyone who took part in Crowdsourcery. But most of all, thank you to you for listening. Your time is valuable, and I really appreciate you spending some of it with me. I've been Mike Rigby, and this has been Eastern Promise, the podcast that explores the full potential of the East of England. We'll be back next week, but until then, bye for now.
You have selected Mike Rigby. Are you sure? Are you serious?
Hey,